Before I answer that, let me just put a small preface. When Rajdeep Swamy invited me to speak at this at the release, I almost doubled up because I wasn't sure what role I was supposed to play for a variety of reasons. First of all, I thought that I would be seen as Dr. Swamy's supporters see me as this anti-national, libtard, prostitute, morally corrupt, ideologically corrupt, financially corrupt, and worse. So I just wondered whether I had strayed into the wrong gathering, and was I right in saying yes to it? There were 3 or 4 reasons for that. One is Rajdeep Swamy and my mother went to school in Ahmedabad, so that becomes very difficult to say no to someone who was a very close friend of my mother. Number 2, she was very kind enough to say, but actually I see you as open, liberal-minded and honest. So I saw that as a character certificate, and I was almost tempted for her to say it loudly so that all of the Dr. Swamy supporters also endorse that one day as a major character certificate. Number 3 was my own experience with Dr. Swamy, which is that, since you asked about friends and enemies, the one thing is very clear. I'm not sure whether you want Dr. Swamy as a friend, but you certainly don't want him as an enemy. and there are enough people who got in and out of jail who realized that over the years. And I had a personal experience a few years ago when the Augusta Westland story broke. In my enthusiasm to get a debate going, as television often does, rather than the story, I rang up Dr. Swamy and said, you have to come for the 9 o'clock show. It's on Augusta Westland. This is your opportunity. And as it turned out, the Congress didn't send a guest. So about within an hour to go for the program, I rang up Dr. Swamy and said, I'm afraid the debate is off. We're just doing a story because the Congress is not coming. And Dr. Swamy tells me, oh, Sonia must have rung you up. And I, for a moment, doubled up that Sonia Gandhi's rung me. And not only that, he then said, I'm going to put it on Twitter that Sonia Gandhi has rung you up, which is why you're not inviting me, you're disinviting me. And I was petrified because Dr. Swamy has a very large following of patriotic tweeters, as he calls them, since the rest of us are unpatriotic as a result, I presume. And I was terrified. And that little exchange with Dr. Swamy convinced me forever, as I said earlier, that even if you don't want to be a friend of Swamy, for God's sake, don't become an enemy. And, in this book, those friends and enemies seem to waver all the time. And, you've got Rajiv Gandhi, with whom Dr. Swamy claims between 1989 and 1991, they were spending 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. plotting how to bring down VP Singh. And today he's plotting how to send his wife to jail. It's interesting that one of the paradoxes is that in this gathering here today, the only BJP minister I see is the other daughter-in-law of Mrs. Gandhi, who wanted to send Dr. Swamy to jail during the emergency. And the paradoxes run right through. I think the strength of this book in particular is that she gives us an insight, Roxanne gives us an insight into a world that, as a political journalist, one is fascinated by. But she doesn't answer the paradoxes. And the paradoxes are, frankly, make me wonder who really still is Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Is he the brave man who valiantly has defended the victims of Hashilpura? Or is he that man who pours the most acerbic venom against the minorities at times and denies them their heritage? Is Dr. Swamy that brave man who took on the emergency in the time that he did? Or is he, in a sense, someone who's, over the years allowed himself at times to compromise with the system? Is Dr. Swamy this man crusader against corruption, which he is? Or was he part of one of the most corrupt governments that India had, i.e. the government of Mr. Chandrasekhar? Is Dr. Swamy this brave man, or is he bitter? Because, he strikes out against Mr. Vajpayee, who is, I thought, the Bhishma Pitama of the BJP. And I'm sure once the BJP reads the book, they will probably certainly not attend the next book release. The moment they read the chapter, the passages of Mr. Vajpayee. So who is really this man? And I think that we still wait to see. I think there is a lot of Dr. Swamy which is to be admired, and there's a lot to be worried about. And that they reside in the same persona makes it even more fascinating. So I don't know whether he's who his friends are and who his enemies are, because they could easily switch tomorrow. I think Fali Nariman is right. I think Dr. Swamy's actual space should be not necessarily where he lies today, but where he sits sits tomorrow. Who knows where Dr. Swamy will go next, and who he will target. I've often wondered who his target was in the book, in certain lines that you write, when you talk about the finance ministry being denied to someone who once wrote a paper with Paul Samuelson. Is that the post that Dr. Swamy aspires to? And if so, what are his views on the incumbent, which you very carefully avoid, I see in the book, which is why suddenly the book stops at 1992. As I was leafing through the pages, I was just waiting for the part where Dr. Swamy was about to explode, I thought, on the current regime. And then I realized that he's very carefully sidestepped that, which means that he still has ambition and future. I thought that this book, normally you write these books when you've decided enough's enough.
Did you see Veer Sanghvi's interview yesterday? He was very clear.
That Dr. Swamy has a future.
About the FM.
Also, and as I see, the FM is not around. So that clearly shows. But I think, therefore, with Dr. Swamy, you never know who his friends and enemies are. And I hope that this paradox is unraveled, because it troubles me. A man of such intelligence and intellect, why do you need to sometimes resort to coarse machinations? A man of who's in a sense at one level taken on the establishment at various times. Why do you today deny a community their heritage and resort to this coarse language, or indulge people who resort to this coarse language and normalize that coarse language almost as if that is the new normal?
Okay, I have to disagree with you as always. Whichever on a panel. I'm going to say something which is going to sound awful to you, but I think that Dr. Swamy is absolutely right that on Ayodhya, and he hasn't said anything personally against Muslims. He's basically said that the Muslim community has too long been indulged in a lot of minority communalism, which is dangerous. And it is dangerous. And when you see what's going on in the world, he's right. I actually think that if the Muslims listened to him on Ayodhya and gave up that broken down piece of, whatever it is now, and let it, and actually Christian Janmabhoomi. I'm not a Hindu, I don't believe in God, and I'm not religious. But it was a shock of my life to go to Christian Janmabhoomi and see that on top of the cell in which Krishna is born is an Eidgah. So just stop, let's listen.
It's not about a peaceful, it's about Hindutva politics being majoritarian, and Hindutva politics denying a community equal citizenship.
He hasn't
and to
done
my
that.
mind, that is not acceptable.
He hasn't done that.
It's not about Ayodhya. And enough blood has been spewed over Ayodhya.
I thought we're talking about Dr. Swamy.
Yes, Dr. Swamy himself has said at times that Muslims essentially who live in India are Hindus and therefore must accept and embrace the dominant philosophy in this country. Why? That is Savarkar's Hindutva, which has caused enough poison and division in this country, which I am unwilling to accept. He's entitled to his views. He's entitled to his views. I am not entitled to follow Swamy's views. I respect him for his war against corruption. I find it poisonous when he speaks about the politics of Hindutva. That's my line. That's my view. And I believe enough blood has flown in this country based on this poisonous division that we create in the mind.
If you were right, you would not one of the worst, it's just one second.
Forget a piece.
One of the worst.
It's a dog whistle.
Hang on. One of the worst incidents of communal violence I've ever seen in my life was in Hashimpura, where Muslims from the age of 13, there were about 70 people to 80 were shot dead in a truck. Okay? And there was only one man who stood up for that.
I said that.
So I don't think that he's biased in the way you think. You're making him sound like a kind of, Karol Bagh, Hindutva Gunda, which I really don't think that he is.
But look at the attack that Dr. Swamy had on Raghuram Rajan last year. To my mind, that was an example of what we don't want in our politics. If Dr. Swamy had a problem with Dr. Rajan, he's a member of parliament, he should have gone to the Prime Minister, they should have settled it in closed doors. You target someone because he's got a green card, for God's sake, that's again the hypocrisy and the paradoxes that we have in our politics. We welcome all kinds of people with green cards into this country, but Raghuram Rajan is anti-national. And whatever else Raghu is, he's not anti-national. And that is my problem.
I think that decides his policy.
Once you do that, which government will make you a minister? If you're going to call the RBI governor while he's there,
Raghuram Rajan did irreparable damage to the Indian economy. I totally agree with Subramanian Swamy on that. And he lowered the interest rates in the beginning. He made no reforms to the banking system, what we're paying for now, but this is not in the book, so let's stick with the book.
Yeah, no, since you say that, I mean, I would like to know Tavleen saying that we should then be talking about demonetization
We're
and the
talking
absurd
about
reforms that we
Roxner's
make.
book. We're talking about Roxner's book.
Yeah.
That's another debate. We fight this out.
Yeah, but again, this why call someone anti-national? You may disagree with someone. Raghuram Rajan had his the dilemma is of a mass leader, right? The dilemma is how do I become a mass leader in today's Indian politics? Indian politics works on vote banks. Indian politics increasingly works on what vote bank you have. What was Dr. Swamy's vote bank was a challenge he's always faced through his career. And it is admirable that despite not having that vote bank, he still survived. I call him the great survivor of Indian politics more than anything else.
Okay, before I think that he's the most misunderstood politician in India.
Dr. Swamy को गुस्सा क्यों आता है और more importantly, who really is Dr. Subramanian Swamy? Please tell us.
Some of the answers there in the book.
I'll tell you something which J.R.D. Tata once told me, and that occurred to him, that when he was being introduced by one of our local leaders, who didn't know exactly who he was or how to introduce him, he said, and as for Mr. J.R.D. Tata, the less said about him, the better.
On that note, Dr. Swamy, can we come and ask you to clear your own record? Yes. Come and speak to us, yes.
As you can see, I'm not sensitive to criticism. And when I want to reply to criticism, I'll go back to my Twitter.
Oh God, tomorrow morning.
Actually, I had not read the book till Roxana had practically finished writing. And she gave me a copy which came back from the printer as the first draft. And I never gave her any suggestions because we have been married, I think, 52 years. And I always felt that she made up her own mind. And therefore, there was no point in telling her this is how it should be done or that should be done. And this book is our effort, and it surprised me how well she writes. Maybe instead of us, maybe along with her sister, she should have been a journalist too. But she has brought out many things which I thought I would have forgotten, and she had maintained meticulously a record of all my reports in newspapers, press cuttings, right from the day I entered politics. Now, when you are in politics, you must learn to face criticism. But as a general rule, I have found that when injustice was done to me, the events actually went in my favor. When I came back to India, became a full professor at IIT. Mrs. Gandhi took very strong objections to my writings against socialism. In those days, nobody would say anything against socialism or the Soviet Union. And therefore, she just passed an order that I should be sacked. Even though I was a full professor, I was given a letter at 5:15 in the afternoon saying that effectively from 5 o'clock, you're no more professor. And they sent people to throw my luggage out of the faculty housing I was in. At that time, an astrologer told me that you have Nicha Banga Raja Yoga.
What is that?
Which translated means that when you go down, you'll go up 10 times more. the next thing I knew was that the RSS people, particularly Nanaji Deshmukh, etc., tracked me down on the basis of my writings on the atom bomb, self-reliance, and brought me into Parliament. And Parliament led to the emergency where, of course, I made a name because of that particular event. And soon I became Lok Sabha MP from Bombay. And the first thing happened when I came to Delhi was a meeting with Rajdeep Sardesai, who asked me, "You were sacked from the IIT, no?" I said, "Yes, I was. I was a full professor. It was not thrown out. I've got a court case going, but it'll take time." So he says, "I'm appointing you on the board of governors of IIT Delhi." So after the first meeting of the board, when I came back, I met him again on another occasion, and he asked me, how's IIT? So I said, "I'm sitting with those people who sacked me. I don't like it at all." So he called his secretary, Shankar, a man called V. Shankar, and said, "Sack all the board members and appoint new ones." So I got my revenge then. And 22 years later, I won the case also. The court held that this order of dismissal is totally bad in law, and it is as if Swamy has continued for all these years as a professor. So I went back to IIT, and at that time I had already become a cabinet minister in Mr. Chandrasekhar's government. And I took a charge as a professor, and then immediately gave a resignation letter to be effective from the next day. And after that, I asked for all my back salary. They were ready to give it, but they didn't like the idea of paying 18% interest. So I thought, anyway, I don't need money. So let me drag on this case as long as possible. And now it is reaching a final conclusion. And if I get my back salary, which I will get, it will be quite a hefty sum. So in the end, the sacking of the IIT has paid me off quite well. And this has happened everywhere. I may not have what he calls as mass base. I don't know what he means by mass base. Generally speaking, I don't pay much attention to journalists saying anything. But the fact is that I have been elected 6 times. 3 times to Lok Sabha, 3 times to Rajya Sabha. And if I had so many enemies, why should I have been brought into Parliament? There were hectic efforts to keep me out. So this book was not really about me, and when I write my biography or autobiography, a lot of people will lose their reputation and sleep. And I'll certainly include at least 1 page about you. Rochna had been through all these upheavals, and at not one stage she really complained.
Yeah.
She came actually from she was daughter of an imperious ICS officer. She had seen a very secure life. She was in fact part of the Lutyens living in Kapurthala Road. And she saw it all through, and not that she ever find me losing any hope in the future. And she stuck with me through very, very difficult times. And therefore, I think the book I should probably write a book about her. In law was her.
Wow.
She actually was a PhD in mathematics. I met her first at Harvard. And she then became a PhD, and she started teaching in IIT with me. Mrs. Gandhi, who got me sacked, also ensured she wanted me to return to America. And Mrs. Gandhi wanted me to return to America because having a very bad effect on the students and changing their minds about socialism. So she, in order to ensure that I don't stay in India, decided that she too must be sacked. So she also was sacked from her teaching. She was a teacher, she was an assistant professor in mathematics. They sacked her. So we were without a job. And but then, as I said, that the Rajya Sabha came along, and I became a member of the Rajya Sabha, and things changed. Many years later, in 1980, because of Rajiv Gandhi, he once dragged me to meet Mrs. Gandhi. And she told me, if I had known that you would stay in India and not return to Harvard, I would never have let you go from IIT in the first place. Because you have become such a headache for me. So, therefore, at all these times, when I started doing politics and people started filing defamation cases against me, it was Roxana who first educated me on how to argue your own case, because then you won't have to pay a lawyer. And she did the work free. Later on, the topping and the icing on my learning was from another teacher sitting here. I don't know whether you'll own up to it or not. But Mr. Pali Nariman was always available. Whenever I had a difficult problem, I'd send him an email or I'd go to his place and learn from him. So the focus of my life, according to me, is I will do whatever I want to do. And two, I'll give as good as I get. So if somebody picks on me, I will chase him. I'll chase him to the end. Mr. Chidambaram had tried to send me to jail on what he called as the fanatic Hindu version of how to fight terrorism. And I don't know whether Mr. Tulsi is sitting here. He was here in the early part of the party of the day. He, in fact, went to court and got a stay from my being sent to jail for an article I wrote in the DNA newspaper on how to fight terrorism. Those who give me lectures on tolerance should read how quickly this was done. And I was going to be painted as one of those Hindu terror guys. And then at that stage I said, if there is Nichabanga Raja Yoga, then one day I will get Chidambaram and send him to jail. And I'm about to send his son to jail, and he won't be very far behind. And if I were to complete my giving as good as I get, then probably Congress Party will hold its working committee meeting in PR jail. So in a sense, I would say that at no stage I had ever despaired that something bad has happened to me. I don't feel that it was wrong to deny me a cabinet position, I must tell you.
That's it.
And if you talk to Modi, he will tell you I never spoke to him about giving me a cabinet position. Nor did I ever tell him to make me a member of parliament. Nor for that Delhi seat. I wanted the seat. I didn't want the seat. This is the whole party, which the then president of the Delhi state, who's now a minister, he told me that 80% of the workers want you as a candidate. And that's how I became candidate. And the candidate I was chosen because they thought that I would fix Mr. Kejriwal good and proper in the campaign. And but it was denied. I never complained.
Who denied, sir?
Well, I mean, it was denied ultimately by the election committee. So why do you want names that we mentioned here? Because this is not my book. When my book comes, I'll name names without hesitation. So, therefore, suddenly one day I get, 2 years later, a call from the party president, Mr. Amit Shah, saying that I should drop into his house. I dropped into his house. And he said, you are going to parliament. And you just send me your biodata because we are going to nominate you for being the most distinguished economist of the country. So I came in now as a representative of the president. Now tomorrow, when my Rahu leaves the Jalamastan, I won't be surprised that I get a similar call saying that you're going to be a minister. It's the philosophy that it is not something that you hanker for, but it's something in your destiny which happens. I came from an ordinary family, middle class family. I went to Harvard, became a professor there, taught for years and years. I joint authored with Nobel laureates, and I came back and then entered politics, been a member of parliament now 6 times, and live a comfortable life. And I have a wife who looks after the house perhaps as well as any Parsi woman ever can.
Because she's a Parsi.
I agree.
That's a very male chauvinistic.
It is not male chauvinistic. She actually controls me. She tells me, you have to eat at this time, you have to sleep at this time, your clothes must be put in this shelf of the cupboard, and she keeps accounts. And I never touch money because she does all the accounts. So therefore, strictly speaking, she was all through the period very unhappy that I wasn't recognized as well as she recognized me. So therefore she wrote this book. I never told her in this book or change this because I know it's useless telling her anything. Made up her mind. You know what Parsi wives are like. And talking about communalism, I have a Muslim son-in-law. I have a sister-in-law who's a Christian. I have practically every religion, and none of them say what Rajdeep Sardesai says about me. I don't know whether we live in the same world or not. So, in total, I would say this book is something to give you a peep into how a wife saw her husband going through ups and downs. But I enjoyed every minute of it, and whatever I have done, I wanted to do. I never believe, as Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that results are your rights. Lord Krishna says result is his right to give you when the time comes. And so when the time comes, I'll get what I need to get. But at the same time, I have had the pleasure of doing unhampered whatever I wanted to do. And that's what really makes me happy with my life. Thank you very much.